baseball team just ended a hot streak, and Jen Karwoski's softball squad is fighting for playoff contention. We will sit down with one of baseball's hottest starting pitchers, Brandon Shileikis. We will also preview the incoming recruiting class for next year's teams. That is all coming up next here on Bobcat Breakdown. Welcome to this week's edition of Bobcat Breakdown. I'm Fearon, and I will be your host for tonight. Before we get down to business, let's bring in our panel of intelligent sports analysts. We're joined tonight by Marty Joseph and Zach Daly. Gentlemen, how are we?
Doing well, Dylan.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Way to round up the semester.
Awesome. Also, we have the savvy veteran, Nick Dench. Nick, how was your Easter?
It was great. How about yours?
Awesome, thank you. Okay, let's get down to business. The baseball team won 9 in a row coming into today's contest against Hartford, where they lost 5-3. They still find themselves still in second place in the MAC with a 10-3 record and only a half game behind Siena for first. This team was projected to finish last in the MAC, but it found a way to win games against top teams in the conference. Guys, do you think this team is hitting its stride too early, or is it the perfect time to get hot? Zach, we'll start with you.
I think this is just right for the baseball team right now. They had a tough loss to Hartford today. That game doesn't mean anything. It's out of conference. I think they can use what they learned in the game against Hartford. They got a big game against UConn tomorrow, and they're going to be able to build on that because they got some big conference games. Siena stands out on the schedule, so do teams like Quinnipiac. So I think they just got to take what they learned in these out-of-conference games because they got a long stretch off before they play MAC games again. So as long as they keep building on what they learned against tougher opponents like a UConn, like a Hartford, I think this team is hitting their stride just at the right moment.
Yeah, you can't really say it's that early because it is the second half of the schedule and there is like 9 games in the conference left. So it's certainly not too early. I think it's like what you just said. It's the perfect stride. They got to stretch out of conference games, kind of get them away from the conference field for a little bit, and then get back into it because they have some pretty tough tests, like you said, UConn, a pretty tough game there coming up.
I don't think it's too early, but I don't think it's the right time. I think it might be just a little bit early. They did get very hot, and that's definitely going to help them going forward. Top 4 teams make the MAC, so they're already in a very good position to make that MAC playoff run. I think it might be a little early. It would be nice to see if they can get some consistency out of the offense. We're really only seeing it out of Vingoletti right now, and that's going to have to pick up in these non-conference games. If they can pick that up, I'd say they're hitting it right on time.
Right, but we might not even be talking about this. Think about it. This team was projected to finish last, and now they're only half game out of first. A 9-game winning streak is a 9-game winning streak. Shouldn't we just be happy that they got on that streak?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marty.
I think that, like what Nick just said, I think even if they do stumble here down the stretch, they've set themselves up for a potential playoff spot with the way they've played through the middle of the season. And even if they say they go 5-4 down the next 9 games in conference, they still will most likely make a playoff spot. So even if they do stumble a little bit, maybe if they did hit their stride too early, they still set themselves up for success.
Yeah, they're sitting at 10-3 in the MAC right now, and Siena's the only team ahead of them at 10-2. I think the Bobcats, Nick mentioned the offense. Yes, you could want their offense to be hitting a little bit better outside of Vingoletti, but the MAC overall isn't a great offensive conference. And you see the pitching dominance from this team, and their pitching is one of the best teams in the MAC. And Siena, the team they're chasing, they're about middle of the pack with a 253 average in the MAC. They're one of the worst pitching staffs in the MAC, so I think the Bobcats are set up well for teams like Siena.
Well, Zach, you mentioned the pitching and working off those points. Can you guys see this team winning 15 conference games? They're able to keep their collective ERA under, let's say, 3.50?
Yeah, I can see them winning 15 conference games right now. They got 9 left, 3 against Siena. Like I said, who I think they match up very well against because of the pitching. Siena's ERA is well over 6 right now, and all they have to do is just keep doing what they're doing. The offense, if they come around, they're going to be fine. This team, I think they're going to win 15 games in the MAC, and I think they're going to make a push for one of the top seeds in the playoffs.
I absolutely think that if the pitching keeps its pace or even gets a little better, because they're all still young arms, so they're still figuring out this college atmosphere. They're used to high school kids, so the fact that they're already doing such a great job, that's huge for these guys. It's big on their confidence. If they can keep pitching the way they are and even improve a little bit, there's no way the offense is going to stay cold. They have been turning around. They've been hitting a lot more home runs since the last time we talked about them a couple weeks ago. So they're doing a much better job on the power front, which is something they've lacked in the years past.
I think they can too. It's going to be difficult because these are the 3 out of the 4 top teams in the conference. They've kind of played the bottom tier of the conference, but I think, like you said, the confidence of the pitching staff is what's going to carry this team. And against the 3 of the 4 top teams and teams that traditionally have the higher batting averages in the conference, Siena leading it with 307 batting average team-wise. I think that's what it's going to be, but I think the confidence in this pitching staff right now can carry them.
One real quick thing, Dylan, before we get back to you. Last time this pitching staff gave up more than 5 runs was all the way back in March. This pitching staff keeps their teams in games, and that's why I think they're going to make a good run at the playoffs.
Zach and Nick, you both make great points about the young pitching staff. But going from one field to another, the softball team has lost 9 out of their last 11 games, but are just 2 games out of a MAC playoff spot after a big win in the second game of doubleheader against Monmouth. A 4-run 7th inning was capped off by a walk-off double from sophomore Paige Giunta to defeat the Hawks 6-5. The Bobcats only 2 games out with 6 conference games remaining. Do you guys see the Bobcats making the MAC tournament in Fairfield? Zach, what do you think?
You know, I'm going to have to say no. They're 5-9 in the MAC right now. They're tied with Fairfield for the most amount of games played. Fairfield's sitting at 12-2. They're sitting pretty right now. Quinnipiac, you know, we've been saying it all year, that bottom part of the lineup, once you hit that 4 or 5 spot in the lineup, wherever Jordan Pellucci's hitting, there's just a drop-off, and that bottom part of the lineup has not been able to pick up their average.
Zach, they have 5 players that are hitting above 280. Don't you think it's more of the pitching than the hitting?
It's also the pitching. There's a lot of things wrong with this team too. We mentioned the fielding before. This pitching staff outside of Sydney Roby hasn't been consistent for the Bobcats. And poor Sydney Roby, she's only got 2 wins on the season. She's supporting a 4.6 ERA or somewhere in that area. She's not getting any run support. So it's the offense, it's the pitching, it's the fielding. But again, a very young team. They got some improvements to make. Again, they got a new coach this year. So I think they're building for the future, but I just don't think this is the year.
Consistency is the word that you guys just used, and I think that's what it is, because sometimes in games the hitting's there but the pitching's not, the pitching's there but the hitting's not, so it has to be tied in together, and that's the only way they're going to do it. You look at their remaining schedule, Marist is the only team with a winning record in the MAC, so it's definitely an opportunity to jump on some of these lower teams, and the opportunity is there because they are only 2 games out, but they have to be consistent. They have to get pitching from all 3 of their better pitchers. They have to play defense, because you've seen defense struggle sometimes too. That can completely take the momentum away from their games. In games that they are hitting or they are pitching well, sometimes the defense is a factor too.
And that defense was a huge factor against Fairfield, the #1 team in the conference. Abby Johnson drops a routine fly ball in right field. Fairfield goes on a run, and they completely blow out the Bobcats in the first game of that doubleheader. But guys, they dug themselves too big of a hole. You have Marist, yes, as the only team with a winning conference record, but Canisius is right behind the Bobcats, and Niagara's not even that far behind. That's their last 3 opponents. So if they can find a way to get some consistency, as Marty said, that would be huge. But they're such a young team. They still have a lot of mistakes mentally and on the field. They need to figure these out quick if they want a chance to make those playoffs.
Well, what about the inexperience? You only have a couple seniors on the team, and then Jordan Pellucci's a redshirt junior. Is inexperience one of the reasons that this team won't make the MAC tournament, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it is. The pitching staff is still very young, and their oldest pitcher, Katie Alfieri, is their worst pitcher this year, and that's a big issue. Then Sydney Roby, who's their best, is their youngest, so the experience factor isn't really playing much of a role, which is hurting the inexperienced players.
Okay, well, that being said, and since they only have a couple limited games left, which player is going to need to step up more, aside from Hannah Lindsley and Jordan Pellucci, excuse me?
I got to say it's Courtney Solt. She's at the top of that lineup. Last year as a freshman, she batted .375. This year she's only batting .298. Her on-base percentage is up near .400, which is big for them out of the top of the lineup. But they need her to be more consistent. At the beginning of the year, she won MAC Player of the Week. She batted over .700 in a week. You need her to get that consistency back at the top of the lineup so Nikki Barba and Jordan Pellucci can drive her in.
Marty, what about you?
I think it's who Nick just said. It's Katie Alfieri. I mean, for the most part this season, her ERA has been through the roof, and it's going down the stretch, especially if they want to make a run, even try to get into the playoffs. She's going to need to be the X factor in the pitching staff, because Lindsley and Roby have been there at times. The consistency maybe lacking a little bit, but at times they've been the 2 go-to pitchers. If they can get a third pitcher for especially some of these big games down the stretch, she's going to be an X factor. I think she's the one that needs to step up, turn the page on her first half or so ever of the season, and just try to focus on this last couple of games.
See, I'm going to go with Sydney Roby, and we all know she's the ace of this pitching staff. But the reason I'm saying Sydney Roby is for her offensive production. She was batting .350 earlier on in the season. She's dropped down to .284 right now. She's got to be that presence in that 3-4 spot in the lineup. She's got to be able to take some of the weight off Jordan Palucci's shoulders. She's got to be able to bruise. And if you turn your attention to the pitching, she's got to prove she can be the ace that this team can build around for the future. Sydney Roby will be the building block for the future, but she's got to prove it the rest of this year, offensively and in the circle.
All right, guys, we all make great points about the baseball and the softball team. We're going to step aside for just a moment, but when we come back, Nick will sit down with Quinnipiac baseball player Brandon Shileikis. Stay with us.
The Bobcat Shop, located at 1010 Sherman Avenue in Hamden. Your #1 choice for Bobcat merchandise. The Bobcat Shop features 2 floors of countless styles and colors. With a full 19,000 square foot screen printing and embroidery operation on the premises, Campus Customs and Simplify can design and decorate any garment or promotional product as quickly as needed. Stop in and say hi.
Bobcat Breakdown. I'm joined alongside with the freshman phenom pitcher, Brandon Shileikis. Brandon, how are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. So you came from Massachusetts. What's the transition like to from Massachusetts to college?
I mean, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, granted, we still play in same conditions. I mean, only difference is the fact that you're playing guys that are stars on all their high school teams, not just high school teams that might have 1 or 2 good players.
And the coaching staff, you know Skip, it's his last year. What's it like playing for him in his last year?
Oh, it's great. I mean, he's fired up and he's all excited about how well the season's going.
And he pitched here back in the 60s, so he knows how to pitch. You're the pitcher. You're one of the very young pitchers on this team.
Right.
How is the talent that's so young, how are they grouping together?
We're grouping together great. I mean, all the guys that are coming back from last year, they say that there's a completely different mindset going into this year. Guys are all on the same page, and we're all gelling, and it's going great.
And you have a guy on the back of your staff, Gary Binkowitz. He's the senior on the team. How is he helping you guys transition?
Oh, he's been a major role player in that. I mean, he's right there helping us. We need to tweak things. He's right there to tell us what we need to do, and he's a great leader.
And then you obviously had an outstanding game a few weeks ago, that one hitter. Run through that game. What was your mindset going in that game?
I mean, only my second start out. I just wanted to improve on my last start. I mean, only going 5 innings. I'm used to going high school. I mean, I'd go 7 innings almost every game. I just wanted to go further than that. Hopefully, get us a little bit further in the game, save the bullpen, try and keep us in the game.
And then when you got to that later innings and you realized, you probably realized at some point that you had that one hitter going, did you feel any added pressure?
No, not really. I mean, from the start of the game, I just kind of went on and did what I always do. It's no difference.
How do you keep a mindset like that?
I mean, just from playing so long, I guess you just get into that groove where it's just another game. You're not going out there thinking about things as much as you normally would.
And because of that outstanding performance, you were named MAC Rookie of the Week that week. What was that like so early in your career?
I mean, it was very humbling, but that's not what I'm here for. I mean, I'm here to win, and it's not about me, it's about the team. I mean, later on in life, that'll be great to look at, but right now, that's not what I'm focused on.
Going forward, you guys have a couple weeks off from MAC play. How are you guys going to improve against the better teams like UConn and Hartford today?
I mean, I think we'll take it just like we did early in the season, playing teams like Tennessee. I learned from them. I mean, today, tough loss, but there are things that we can take from that. We played a tough team. I mean, we've faced tough teams early in the season, and we've learned from playing them, and I think it makes us better going into playing teams in the MAC. I mean, no offense to the MAC, but I mean, these are top tier teams, and there's a big difference, and I think it really prepares us for conference play.
You guys have a UConn team tomorrow who's made the NCAA tournament a couple times in the last 4 years.
Exactly.
So how does the pitching staff as a whole, I know it's staff weeks, so how do they group together again?
I mean, pretty much we have Breezer going tomorrow, and he's coming off decent rest. I mean, he's just going to be going in. I'm sure he's going to want to get the bullpen some rest. I mean, we used Scaglione today for 5 innings, I think, and hopefully we can get in deep in the game and get to our guys like Osija and Binkowitz and close it out.
All right, thanks for joining us. Good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you for
We'll
having
be
me.
right back on Bobcat Breakdown looking at the new recruiting classes for next season.
I could really go for a Ray and Mike sub right now.
Come to Ray and Mike's and try our Philly chicken with cheese for just over $4, giant cheesesteak subs, and mouth-watering boar's head sandwiches for as low as $4.75. Q-Cash accepted just a mile down the road on Whitney, here at Ray and Mike's.
In the last 5 years, Quinnipiac Athletics has risen from an unknown NEC school to a top MAC contender. With that being said, the 2014 recruiting class is supposedly one of the best classes this university has ever seen. After an NCAA tournament bid, the field hockey team is bringing in 8 freshmen for next year, led by Michelle Federico, Sarah Cook, and Dana Barlow from Port Elizabeth, South Africa. The men's basketball team also has a top recruiting class coming in, which is headlined by Samuel Dingba, with the Bobcats losing 3 seniors, including power forward Ike Azatam and guard Shaq Umar Shannon. Tom Moore has brought in 2 power forwards and 2 shooting guards for next year. Shifting from the hardwood to the ice, the men's ice hockey team hopes to continue its recent success as they bring in 10 freshmen for next year's campaign, including 2 sets of brothers, the Renoufs and the Pipers. Guys, what have you seen from the incoming classes, and what should we look forward to? Marty, we'll start with you.
Well, I'll go with hockey here. I mean, there's certainly a lot of talent in that class. I mean, you look at Landon Smith, Tanner McMaster, and then the 2 brothers you just mentioned. But I'm a little concerned because I don't think the speed game, I mean, it works in most cases, but you saw specifically in that Providence game when they go into the NCAA tournament, which they probably from here on out should be expected to compete for every year. They're going to get out-muscled, and they got bumped right off their game in the first period against that Providence team. And you look at this recruiting class, and even the next 3 classes coming in, and there's only 1 player over 6'1". So, I mean, Pecknold's formula for speed and skill have worked in the last couple of years, especially with the Joneses and Matt Pekka being probably the best 3 players in that circumstance. But you can see it when it brings weaknesses to them as well. 2 years ago, they were a team that relied on its depth, and right now you only have 2 centers on that entire team in Tim Clifton and Matt Pekka. And last year, the biggest problem was finding a 3rd or 4th line center. Tim Clifton was rotating in between those 2 lines, so that's a problem. Tanner McMaster probably will be the player that will be one of those top 3 centers. But then in size too, you lose Jordan Samus-Thomas and Vice Van Brabant, and those 2 in size and hitting and physical play, that's going to be costly as well.
Well, right, Marty, what you just said was we had a young defense this year and an experienced offense. Now it seems like next year it's going to switch. Who do you see getting some serious ice time for next year?
In terms of defense and in terms of offense?
Defense.
In terms of defense, I think Danny Federico obviously will be the #1 defenseman. I think you see Connor Clifton probably will be paired along with him. I think that over the course of the season, Devon Tays really evolved into a playmaking sort of defender, into a defender that saw some ice time in the defensive zone as well. And I think you're going to see Alex Barron as well. Those are your top 4D right there, I think. Whether some of these new recruits come in and crack that top 6, it's going to be difficult to see. I wouldn't mind seeing Tom Hilbert either. I mean, he's the biggest player on the team, and we haven't seen him out on the ice for a minute in his career yet. So it'd be interesting to see if he can crack that top 6 defense too.
I think the biggest problem with this recruiting class coming in for Ryan Pecknold's team is, you mentioned it, they're fast, but they're not strong. And they lost 2 big pieces to this team the last 2 years, in Jordan Samuels-Thomas and Bryce Van Brabant. They were their big bruises on the forward. Now the biggest hitter this team's going to have is probably going to be Connor Clifton. He's a D-man who likes to pinch. We see he's got a lot of talent, but he gets into trouble when he likes to throw his body around. We saw him take 4 game misconducts because he got a little too physical. This team, I think they're trying to redefine themselves a little bit, and you can see that with the class they're bringing in. You got players like Smith, you got the Piper brothers. They're fast, but if they come up against a big bruising team, it'll be interesting to see if they can skate faster than them and avoid the big hits.
And the size element for this team, as you guys mentioned, it's not even going to work in the ECAC. You got a team like Cornell who's going to hit you hard, and they're going to continue with that. And you look at Tom Hilbrick's brother, Christian Hilbrick. He's 6'7", playing forward for that Cornell team. So this is a Cornell team, along with other teams in the ECAC, Brown too. Two teams that give Bobcats trouble as it is because they're bigger. Now the team's even smaller against those teams. They might struggle even in the ECAC to become a very talented contending team because they're going to get run off the puck all the time.
And you look at their success the last 2 seasons, and it's been their depth. And their top 2 lines have been full of skill, but you need a third line to be a checking line. You can't have 3 lines of skill, or else you're never going to be able to shut down a team's top offensive line. 2 years ago, it was Ben Arndt, Corey Hibbler, and Jordan Samus-Thomas were really effective, especially in the national tournament. This year, it was Corey Hibbler, Bryce Van Braben, and Jordan Samus-Thomas. You don't have any of those 3 guys anymore. So that's going to be interesting because you can't put the Renoufs out there on a third line, or you can't put Travis St. Dennis. St. Dennis does a good job getting in the dirty areas and fighting for loose pucks, but he's not going to be able to outmuscle players like Christian Hilbrick for Cornell.
I think your best hitting or physicality-wise player on forward is going to be Tim Hilbrick, which really isn't a very good strategy for this team. He's 5'11", probably the tallest forward on this team now. He likes to hit. He's still going to get run off the puck by all those huge players in the ECAC, but he's probably your best hitting player outside of Connor Clifton.
Well, Nick, shifting to basketball, Tom Moore has brought in 4 freshmen, headlined by Samuel Dingba, as we just mentioned. We got 4 new guys coming in, 2 from Connecticut. Who do you see getting some serious play on the court?
I think the only one we really see is Samuel Dingba. There's that big void that Ike Azatam's going to leave, and that could either open up a spot for Justin Harris or Marquise Barnett to slip into that and have Zaid Hurst switch to the 2 with Kasim Chandler playing that other point guard job, and then having Dingba as a 6'6" small forward, which would be huge for this team. I've watched a couple of his tapes. He's very athletic. He actually has a jump shot, which is something we haven't seen too much out of in the last 2 years for this Bobcats team, out of a big man, outside of anybody who's a guard. So I think you really only see Dingba get significant playing time.
What about Chase Daniels from New Haven? He's 6'8", 215 pounds. You're losing Azatam. This guy's more athletic than guys like Justin Harris. Barnett's going to be out, probably going to redshirt next year. Do you see Chase Daniels getting any playing time?
I don't know. The last guy we saw play right off the bat freshman year was Ousmane Drame, and he really didn't even get too much playing time because he was trying to figure it out. And Ike Azatam played his freshman year, but it's not too often you see a big man right away get a lot of minutes. Even Justin Ruddy, Ike Azatam, and Ousmane Drame, arguably the 3 best big men this school is going to see in quite some time. Even those 3, they didn't get starting jobs. They didn't get significant minutes their freshman year until maybe halfway through the season.
Well, Marty, Nick, what do you guys think about this team losing 3 seniors, very experienced players, Umar, Shaq Shannon, and then Ike? How do you see this team looking for next year?
I think this team will be just fine next year. I think this team's going to be one of the better teams in the MAC next year. Their big loss is Umar Shannon and Ike Azatam, but I don't think the guards are as big a problem as the forward, because I think you're going to see players like Evan Conti, who really had a breakout year this past year, step up. As long as Kasim Chandler can develop into a more well-rounded player, they're going to be just fine at the guard position. Justin Harris is probably going to be starting the season at the 4 instead of Sam Dingba. They're probably going to want to transition him into the college game a little slower, so you'll see him get a lot of minutes, but not right off the bat.
Even with Justin Harris being more of a shooter, not really a post-up player, and Dingba being both, let's say, you don't think with a lot of shooters in the starting lineup they would start Dingba over Justin Harris?
I think this team wants a lot of shooters in the starting lineup, because even Ousmane Drame, who's 6'9", he can step out and he can shoot the mid-range jump shot. So if they have a small forward, a power forward, and a 5 that can shoot the ball outside, they can really spread the floor, and then you get the ball down low to Ousmane Drame, who we know can dominate the boards.
Okay, well, what about field hockey, Zach? We got 8 guys coming in, highlighted by 3 really, really talented players. What do you got for field hockey?
I think the one player you have to look at for the field hockey team coming in is Michelle Federico. She's played right up the road in Cheshire at high school, and she kind of knows what it's going to be like to play in this Bobcat system, because at high school she was coached by Eileen Gallagher, who played under Becca Main here at Quinnipiac. And if I started reading off all the accolades that Michelle Federico had, we'd probably be here for another 20 minutes. She's an All-American. That's the big one you have to know. She had 20 goals last year. And this team, they need to replace a goal scorer. They need to replace the best goal scorer this program's ever had in Jess Rusin, and not to mention Kristen Engelkeith. So I think Michelle Federico's going to help take some of that pressure off of Danielle Allen next year. You're going to see Savannah Riley. Michelle Federico, I think, is going to get bumped up to forward from midfield. And then obviously Danielle Allen will probably play the 3 forwards.
And I think you're going to see Dana Barlow step right into that starting midfield. You see Chris Romano leaving. You see Dana Barlow's from South Africa, like Meg McCready was a few years ago. So Becca Main knows what she's doing when she's going to South Africa. She found a player who she's very comfortable with that play style with. So it's going to be a very interesting year because of how young this team's going to be.
Well, with losing recent, I'm sorry, Marty, how do you think this team will fare next year? Can we expect another NCAA tournament bid?
Well, it's certainly going to be a tough hole to fill. Like Zach just said, it's the best, probably the best goal scorer this program's ever seen. But I think just, at least since I've been here, the system that Coach Becca Main has implemented into her team has worked, and she's bringing in the correct pieces. And you can see it at the last 3 years, they've gradually made bigger and bigger steps, ultimately last season reaching the NCAA tournament. So I think they've set themselves up for success, and I think that these new players coming in, it's a pretty big class. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of talent. So I think they've set themselves up for success again, but it's going to be difficult because they did lose some solid pieces from that team last season.
You guys make great points, and it's looking to be a very interesting end to the semester, as well as a bright future for the Bobcats. This concludes another edition of Bobcat Breakdown. But before we go, please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Q30Sports, and visit our website at www.q30television.com. For Marty Joseph, Zach Daly, and Nick Dench, I'm Dylan Fearon. Have a great night.